So I loved watching this exploration of identity through the myriad lens of those around me and those I saw modeled online and in the news.
What's this time?
I take inspiration from Nick's in political activism and like sincerity and wholesomeness. And one thing I have noticed as I work on my own intentional deconstruction and reconstruction of self has been this difference in willingness to listen to the young. To me, that seems more of a distinction for whether or not I value your opinion than anything else in my life. And I've realized this really comes back to child sexual abuse, because a lot of people will put their ego before listening to a child report on a family member
Or a friend.
It's part of the taboo, it's part of the shame.
Or a friend.
It's just a true statistic that we know about this endemic. A layer of nuance that was lost in the educational campaign surrounding pandemics, which, hats off, raised the literacy on viruses like massively. That is one benefit to the pandemic, but one thing that a layer of nuance that has been kind of left behind is epidemics. And yeah, the difference between what endemic means and epidemic and pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people, words that end in ick give them the ick. Possibly because we keep tying this idea of race and worth to disease. It is literally a pox-ridden blanket being constantly applied to the American people and dying.
I tried to say the same thing I already said.
Fucking AIDS, Ebola, now COVID. I cannot stress enough how concerning that narrative is, and the tying of the two, the pairing of those things in the public psyche. Not healthy for us, not good for us. Not good for us. And of course, I mentioned earlier how pedophilia and pedophilia apologists are being used as a means of weaponizing the conversation surrounding gay rights and transgender rights. Transgender being one of the newest shoots on the beautiful tree that is the many-layered, many multifaceted reality of personhood that the love revolutions, the primarily contraceptive-based one and the primarily queer-based love revolutions, have had on our people.
And unearthing.
These are breaking of chains.
Yeah.
These are liberation cycles.
Yeah. Okay.
I saw a lot of reminders this year on Instagram. Keep in mind, my Instagram environment is highly insulated, artist culture with incredibly progressive values. So, you know, I'm very edgy on that like news front to a certain extent. And one of the reminders I kept seeing in a lot of the politically active accounts that I follow was that Stonewall was a riot, and people kept reminding each other, like, don't forget Stonewall was a riot. And it was a sort of bolstering of spirits, like supporting of morale for those who were cognitively in the trenches, on the discussions and the activism that was being required and called upon for their value systems. People lost loved ones, so many loved ones this year, and have been losing loved ones to this self-same battle across the globe. And so, you know, this reminder that Stonewall was a riot was not meant to incite violence so much as it was meant as a reminder that punching up ain't a crime, honey. But honey has so many layers, you can't say it right now. Poor Winnie the Pooh. If he could see us now, he'd be so sad.
You could say it.
It's like his favorite word.
It is his favorite word.
I'm a word lover, you know, word fan, word fanatic, pyrokinetic, fanatic. Yeah. So these are sort of the themes. Where am I going? Again with that intersectionality, right? So I am identifying as, very hesitantly actually, I should say, I'm very hesitantly identifying as transgender to the extent that I have made legal changes to reflect that. And my self-construal is such that my behavior is reliant on it. It's an important social identity to me. Oof, my chair just like tried to make me sit straight. Hate that. I am not a sit straight person. And it's so funny, everybody I know and who loves me are like, Cozy, you're trans because you are trans fucking parent. Ha 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 ha. I'm a transparent person. And I am a trans person who would love to be a parent. And I think that that is deeply, deeply, deeply important in my conceptualization of my activism and the ways that my political, highly politicized identity, which forces me to be able to articulate myself. Or be fully crushed under the oppressive weight of disapproval and oppressive intentional. Never mind. So we've got all this stuff going on: self-construal, behavior, social identity. Oh yeah, I want to be a transparent. I want to be a transgender. Well, transgender, non-binary parent. And that goes back to this betrayal of trust that I feel was made by so many of my fellow Americans when they voted bathroom bills in place or did any other type of legislation support, legislative, executive branch support that directly threatened the bodies of people I care about and people I know and people that I don't know and people who just don't deserve to have their bodies threatened. Which is like most people. It's most people. People just do not deserve to be at that level of bodily vulnerability, that level of direct, oppressive, violent threat to their self, to their personhood, to their self-concept, to their self-worth. None of it. Stop killing trans kids. What the fuck? Right? But when I say that I am hesitant to identify as trans, I mean that, when you're part of edgy social movements, whether it's an underground beat poetry movement or it is some other movement entirely, when you're part of these sort of edgy, truly on, and I don't mean edgy derogatory, I mean like truly on the cutting edge of technology, again, cutting edge social technology. Here is one of those super fancy Japanese folded steel knives, and it is a cleaver. This is a business knife. Oh no, this hasn't been recording. Hopefully it's more for my benefit than yours. Snip. I know. The other one was really cool. Yeah, so this is the business knife. I don't even know where I'm going with this. I'm just kind of rambling. Yeah, I'm really up in arms about this whole parenthood thing, really. I always wanted to be a parent, and I always thought really hard about how the ways that I would parent well. And my ex-partner and I talked pretty extensively about parenting together. And when we were discussing their potentially getting on hormones, the idea of freezing sperm and things started coming up and being discussed as a serious consideration, so that we could still have children if they decided to transition at the level of going full she/her, and doing hormone replacement therapy, potentially even sexual reassignment surgery. We had been talking and conceptualizing these things together for years, and it took many, many years to get our mouths around it. We were so gentle with each other, and the way that we talked to one another was so kind, and we left so much space for one another that it really took years to have these conversations. And I'm glad that it did, because it allowed them to feel a lot more confident about what they felt or what they were thinking or what they knew about themselves, from an internally, intuitively searching way rather than an externally and internally then applying kind of way, which is a powerful means of knowing yourself. Sometimes you won't have the time or the motivation or the attention span to fully elaborate your self-concept to that extent, but if you do get that opportunity, it can be really helpful. Like, it can be really good. And so that just exploratory time period gave me an understanding and like a window into what I think everyone really deserves, all trans people, but everyone in a larger sense also. Like, trans people just like paved the way for this, but we all deserve that extra space to elaborate our self-concept in a way that's meaningful to us, and then be able to apply it in community with one another. And community is a huge part of creating that space. But anyway, yeah, the cutting edge social technology, underground movements, environments, one of the things about being in those, is that you have things come up where somebody like kind of tries something on and people are like, after, like a 10, 20 year period, decide no. And then still the debate goes back and forth, right? That's one thing we learned about this nuance. And we learned it I don't know about your experiences in the queer community, but in some way, we all learned it in a pretty crushing way that these conflicts within our communities can tear us apart. The bisexual versus pansexual debate might seem really silly, but it gets at this more central, deeper question about spectrums and binaries that is truly essential to our conceptualization of the world. And I know that I've talked a lot about spectrums and distributions and light and sound and music, but
that's because it's pretty.
Isn't that all it is? And yeah, one of the things that I have personal experience in when it comes to this cutting edge technology, the edgy place where there is hot debate and genuine hurt going on surrounding our conceptualization of things that are so new. We don't have, and they're not really new, but they're new in English, they're new under colonialism, they're new in this present day in a sense where we're trying to make room and legal space for bodies that, bodies and minds and hearts and perspectives that don't conform to our historically implemented systemic things. So, we're trying to make space. I'm getting way off, but so the thing is, these pretty much assigned female at birth people who identify as trans, non-binary, and then you have assigned male at birth people like my ex, who identified as trans, non-binary.
Pretty sure she's a woman now.
But definitely seemed on the way to going trans women, and I hope that they are happy.
It's like Schrodinger's ex. I can't tell if I'm actively avoiding intuitive knowing or if I am being polite or...
And you have these two, and this is sort of a polarizing topic because none of this is a binary gender role. And none of this includes the trans medical perspective or experience, except possibly as tertiary. Like in my case, having PCOS, I have slightly moderated hormonal experiences, but it's no more and no less, thanks to, diet, exercise management, than impact on my life than normal, honestly, hormonal cycles. I get a little extra nipple hair, I think. That's it. And my testosterone is slightly elevated, but it's elevated to the extent of like within the ratio of how significant this is. It's not significant at all. But like,
and these are averages.
Boy testosterone is here, and my testosterone is here, and girl testosterone is here.
Yeah.
It's like that. So, that's nothing. And so for somebody who loves nuance and getting in these like ever increasing different layers of things, I can be an incredibly frustrating person to somebody who has to deal with the living realities of the transmedical aspects of transgenderism and the binary gender roles. Like those, it's not, doesn't easily translate. I am abrasive in the same way as like privileged white men like to these people specifically, I assume, just because of this, like that could exist if everybody hadn't been experiencing this entire love revolution.
That was supposed to be a plus sign. It was like an and then a plus, and then I did both at once, and it turned out looking a little weird.
This got changed for respect purposes, right?
Yep, it did.
The L got put in front for higher visibility for lesbians. That was a cool move. This
For
love
their
revolution
caregiving
that has been
during
going on
the AIDS epidemic.
and continues to go on everywhere globally. It's amazing. And if we all hadn't been here together, understanding and experiencing this, understanding these cutting edge explorations of self, and I feel like to a pretty large extent,
under
it's
systemic
not just
oppression.
the queer community who is
only
experiencing
edgy
these sorts of things. I think everybody does.
Violent threat
and
of
we can all see each other too, I hope. Especially more with the internet. We're all in the same room, right? The same spaceship.
The same planet.
The same environmentally threatened biodome. And I don't have stomach for anybody who wants to look into the future without this vivid excitement for what's going on here. But I hate lacking stomach for things, so of course I really wanted to improve on that. I think it's going okay so far. This is raw. I'm raw, but I'm lucky it's a Sunday, because those are like days where you sort of have special dispensation to be a little extra religious and a little bit more real with yourself and your people, and I'm just going to take that opportunity now. I do want to talk more, though, about my hesitancy to identify as transgender when I am in this very fun subset of non-binary-dom that allows me to pretty much have all the same privileges as a cisgender person without dealing with any of the challenges of a transgender person. So that's, and that's not necessarily true. That isn't like a fair, accurate representation as far as like what the challenges are. Or their living and felt experiences, but I do think that the trans-binary experience has much more immediate
Right.
Like, they're in much more immediate danger.
They are.
Due to my ability to just get off as like a tomboyish lesbian, and that is
Or
fair,
passive
and so
woman.
that needs to be said and centered and acknowledged and reminded and all of these things. So, am I really lesbian? I mean, I'm really sapphic. I tend to view my sexual identity through the perspective of love, sophicism, and homoeroticism, because honestly, most of my perceptions of like healthy relationships came from positive modeling or romanticizing of homoerotic and transerotic writing, and I don't think I'm alone there. And that's what I mean about this sexual loving revolution. It's just so powerful. Like, it's everywhere. It's behind every closed door. You can see it on Pornhub when you search transgender, transsexual, something like that. Like, you can see they release their data sets, and you can see how often that gets searched for, porn to get off to, and the highest search rates are in the most lockdown states. They're in the most red states, they're in the most restricted states. The movement of people is heavily restricted in those states compared to the movement of product through those states. And that's how I view the world, is the level of restriction on people versus product. It's the quickest and easiest way, the most parsimonious way to think in terms of valuing people over property, because the world is currently living on the infrastructure of a system that was built surrounding commerce and that commercialized human bodies. And because of that deep, dark, awful, bloody past, God, I didn't need to say bloody, I really have to think, when I'm trying to think in terms of a pragmatic and practical application for decolonization, my first thought is, what areas on the map are restricting the movement of bodies but not the movement of product? And in what ways are they restricting the movement of bodies? So across America, if you're thinking about all of the different states and you're thinking about it with that in mind, the restriction of bodies on the border with Mexico is a very different type of restriction of bodies on the border with Canada, for example. Or the way that people move between the East and the West tells you a lot about their income status, right? So I hesitantly identify myself as transgender within all of these different layers of not really though. But there is this additional aspect in cyborgism, and I know I talked about it a lot, so much that I can't even bring it up again right now. But the level to which my cognitive structures are organized along decision rules and logic structures that mimic the devices that I use is an important part of understanding the way that children develop, that humans develop, and that our relationships with our devices inform our behaviors and our decision making. This reflection where they live in our heads rent free is an important part of our cognitive environment. At the end of the day, I felt it was so important to be, well, one more thing, a little bit of a history lesson, and then I really need to eat lunch, which, yes, it's pizza again. I love pizza. It is basically high school up in here with the amount of pizza that I am eating. But when your identity is so marginalized, historically oppressed, intentionally oppressed. I'm not going to do the coal and diamonds thing again, I promise. And you're attempting to make room for it. You're just kind of actually attempting to get out of the box. Right? You need to like make some hinges. Create a gap. Is there a lock? There is my safety pin. You just want out of this awful box that should never have been there in the first place. Let me out. In a very practical way, in a living experience within the system way, you know, getting documents, changing laws, winning rights. Just to be a person, right? Just to be your specific flavor of the thing that isn't allowed. And your specific flavor of that thing is going to be myriad, nuanced, multifaceted, many-layered, like an onion. Yeah. And we all know that. I hope. But this process, this part of the process, right? This labor, the door-to-door of it, the advocacy, organizing, dealing with like literal warfare efforts against your movement, such as drug campaigns, such as misinformation campaigns, of course, goes without saying. Literally just like murdering people of your group, murdering resistance fighters, right? Sending them to jail. That was part of the drug thing. It was like, oh, hey, let's just make an easy slave force by continuing to inject the population with a variety of different drugs and substances and messaging surrounding those drugs and substances in a way that ensures we can continue to operate a lot of our most basic infrastructural systems on slave labor. And the insidiousness of that basic infrastructural system aspect of it all is the part where nobody who works close enough to know about it feels like they can say anything about it, because it's literally holding the whole country up and they don't know what to do. They're freaked out. They don't know. It's mostly what's going on with everybody. Everybody's just freaked out. They feel they know too much and they don't know what to do about it all. Me neither, but I figure if we talk about it, we'll probably get further. But yeah, so this labor of getting your identity officially allowed. You know, why are we starting from this presumption of like determining which people are allowed to exist, right? Like the inherent structure is fundamentally unsound if you have to advocate for the existence of a human body, like as opposed to an unexistence of them. Especially under conditions of false resource scarcity and resource hoarding. Like, none of that's necessary. You shouldn't have to advocate at all for a human being to exist, let alone for them to be allowed to exist in the specific way that they feel like existing, as long as it doesn't harm others or themselves, right? We have this idea of your freedoms end where mine begin, and do no harm. We want to see those things in our social contracts. That's something important to us. But yeah, this labor, what nobody talks about, or maybe everybody talks about, and I'm the last one, but this process and this labor means having to conceptualize your identity with so much political, like embedded political implications, political activism, political philosophies, beliefs, behaviors, that it can't hold anything else. Or all of the politics of it are embedded in the being of it, in the mosaic of it. And a lot of intelligent creators are just embedding the political part of it with political values that, you know, scale. And so that's great. And I love to see it. But yeah, I'm not trying to get off track, but I'm really getting off track. The level in which this identity is being forced to be politicized under conditions of oppressive systems which are repressing that identity's existence in a general sense, in a constant everyday way, means that the variability of people, all of these specific flavors, is actually pretty low. And there's a certain amount of necessary homogeny for all of this political activism just to get allowed to exist. And that's the case with a lot of political identities, a lot of identities in general. And so that's the whole point of this positive construction of selfhood and intentional construction of selfhood, so you can decide how, in what way, to what extent your identity is political. And how you'll let that be operationalized in political ways. And how you are personally going to operationalize them in political ways. Because there's this goal, there's this further goal, not just being allowed to exist, but being allowed to create systems that don't use this model, that don't presume somebody has to prove their right to be in the group, to prove their right to be alive before they're allowed to be alive. There's this broader goal of deconstructing systems that would assume inherent wrongness in this in the first place, because you shouldn't have to fight to exist in your myriad layers of selfhood. And the unending nuance of self-expression and personal experience. That's how you know. I know. We'll pick back up after I eat lunch. It's funny, I accidentally just called that second one transgender instead of transgender. That's how you know I'm talking too much about. Yo. It's just outside of my purview. There's so much that is. And I think that's the point I'm really making. I'm like, I can't talk on so many of these subjects, and I really need my positionality to be fully understood, and like why positionality matters in the first place. Why is this not working? God, this is a really intense special episode, huh? I'm just going for all of it, all at once. Wow. Luckily, it's like a perfect autumn Sunday. This is definitely the best bread dough of the bake so far. Check this out. Look at this bubble. Look at that. That's good, right? Oof. Yeah, I don't wanna. Oh yeah. It's just such a big identity. There's so much going on. And people feel very comfortable defaulting to using just she with me all the time. I really prefer, when it comes to pronouns, I prefer people to use what they are feeling in the moment based on how together we are in that present time. Speaking of this present time and how together we are in it, I do believe that is exactly 1 hour left, so I think we should just listen to some music now and absorb all of that mid-episode arc, apex holding, whatever, I don't even know. I'm just thinking about the way you do arcs if you are using stones. A lot of my metaphors go back to masonry. And it's not because I know Freemasons, although I have known several in my life. It is more about reading Ken Follett's World Without End and Pillars of the Earth. But let's listen to Alex Delzer. Somebody from the area recommended this artist to me and started listening to it. Just an absolute delight. Oh my gosh, what a drifting, wonderful way to end this episode and kind of bask and contemplate. So we're just going to start with the first one of the album, the new album, Back of the Cupboard, and we are going to listen through until we reach the end.
I'm great on stage, but I'm bad on camera. That's why my TikToks are very average. That's why my tracks there aren't making damage. That's why this whole thing is hard to manage. But I know I got art. Know I got something that comes from the heart. Know I got light when it's scary.
That's not what I thought it was. Although that's pretty good. That, it must have been something else that played for me the other day. Sorry about that, everyone. Do go check that out, though. Really great. No, it was just no lyrics. And, lo-fi. I can't. I'm trying to type, man. I can't listen to people say words. Listen to sound at all right now. Gosh, it's such a
Let's wrap this up and do the final episode. Thanks for listening, everyone.